Welcome back to Hard Truths with Hardy. Today we're going to talk about Tennessee stereotypes versus reality. But before we get there, let me tell you a little bit about how my week's going. It's already been a busy week. In real estate, that's not the norm. Every week is not busy. I always call it mountains versus molehills. The weeks you're not busy, you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this whole thing going to crash? Am I going to be able to make it? And then it gets busy again the next week, and you're like, when am I going to breathe? That's how this week has been for me. Monday, I worked until 9 o'clock, and I finally put my iPad down because I just was brain dead, and I couldn't think anymore about what else needed to be done, and I thought, I'm just going to have to start again a new day. I've listed two new construction houses this week, a resale house in Sevierville. So it's been a very busy week. It's been interesting to compare the Sevierville market versus the Knoxville market. Knoxville's at about 56 days on market. Sevier County is 97. I think that shows you how, even though the two towns are pretty close together, there's a vast difference. A lot of Sevier County is tourist homes, overnight rentals. Their average price is much higher. They're in like the 760s for average home price. Knoxville, we're in the mid 4s, so vast difference between the two. And I'm thankful we are not at 97 days on market here in Knoxville. So it takes a little more effort to get things sold in Sevier County. Yesterday, I worked with a UT student. His dad was buying him a condo to live in as an investment while he's here in law school, and that was really enjoyable. We looked at a lot of resale condos and then ended with a new construction condo. Who wouldn't pick that, a brand new condo over one that's already been lived in? So that was a really good opportunity for him, and I said, you better keep this clean so we can resell it in 3 years and it'll be a great investment for your dad. I think if you've watched any of our podcasts, you've probably learned by now that I did not grow up in Knoxville, Tennessee. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. It's outside of Somerset, Kentucky, but it's actually Science Hill. Not Science Hill, Tennessee, Science Hill, Kentucky. It's very small. I mean, we finally have a McDonald's and Hardee's in Science Hill now. That's about as big as it gets, okay? So I grew up on a farm. We pretty much grew all of our own food. We had beef cattle, we had hogs, chickens, guineas. We grew tobacco. We grew a huge garden. We canned everything. We didn't buy store-bought vegetables. Very different life. And my parents, they didn't waste a whole lot. We weren't spending money a lot. My dad did not believe in like new school clothes or anything like that. So if we wanted school clothes, we had to raise extra strawberries and sell those. I knew from an early age that was not the life for me. So as soon as I turned 16, I said, I'm getting a job. Like, I need a car, I gotta get a job, because that's the only thing that's gonna get me away from farm life, which I did not love. My sisters would tell you that when it came time to work in the garden or pick the strawberries, I would find some reason to not have to do it. I've always had asthma. That came in handy pretty conveniently. I would find a lot of reasons not to get out there and sweat in the garden, but sometimes I had to do it. My dad would make us do projects. Like one time he was putting in a pond, and he decided that we had to get all the land around the pond ready, like seed and straw. It was a full day's work. He wrote us a check for $28.58 at the end of the day because that was minimum wage. I was pissed. I worked hard. I sweated. I did not like it. So I knew quickly that wasn't for me. I got a job at Walmart as soon as I could. I would work 40 hours a week, even in high school, whatever they would let me work. I would stay till 2 a.m. because I wanted my own cash and I wanted out of the house. So I've always worked from the time that I could. And then when I got out of college, I was in management with Walmart. They moved me to Indiana and then eventually to Knoxville, Tennessee. I'd never been here. I never intended to stay in Knoxville, but once I got here and I started making friends, it really became a lot like home to me. And when I say home, I mean a lot like where I'm from, but just on a bigger scale. The people are so nice. When I lived in Indiana, everybody made fun of my country accent. There's not a lot of southern people in Indiana. They speak a lot differently. The land looks different. Everything's flat there, and there's corn everywhere you look. I didn't really fit in, I don't think. So I was excited to come back south. But when I came to Knoxville, I'd never been here. And after a few years, I thought, this is a perfect place for me. I've made a lot of friends. I've gotten myself set up, and I'm still only about 2 hours away from my family. That keeps everybody from dropping in on each other unannounced, but it's still close enough that we can all visit anytime we want to. I really think it's the perfect scenario. A lot of people think there's a huge difference between Knoxville and Kentucky. I don't really agree. I get joked all the time about, did we have a couch on our porch or did we wear shoes? Honestly, I don't think Knoxville's a lot different than where I come from, other than it's bigger. But, there's a lot of stereotypes. My family's from Appalachia, and it's Appalachia. If you know where you're from, it's Appalachia, not Appalachia. That tells me you have no idea where it's at. But, part of Tennessee's in Appalachia too. So there's a lot of stereotypes that go along with that, that people are poor and inbred and, uneducated. There's a little bit of that everywhere. To me, it's not any different here. I see the same things here that I saw in Kentucky. I will say something that's helped me a lot with the stereotypes is being in a slightly bigger town so that I get to see more diversity. My parents, I can't remember my parents ever being discriminatory, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I didn't hear those kinds of things at home, but I did hear it out with, other people. And growing up, there really weren't any other cultures or people that didn't look like me in school. I think I'm blessed to live somewhere that's a little bit bigger where I get that. It's definitely opened my mind and changed my perception and perspective on other people. It's been a good experience for me. So I think it's helped me to not be judging of others and to be a lot more open-minded. And I think sometimes it would be helpful for a lot of people from small towns to get out and see that's not what the entire world looks like. There are people that don't look the same as us, and they're not any less or better than we are. I don't know. I'm thankful for my experience here. Something I noticed with my job in real estate is it doesn't matter where you are, there are stereotypes within communities everywhere. I'll give you an example. People call me all the time and they've been online looking, or, the worst, they've been on Facebook, and they'll say, where's a great place to live in Knoxville? And somebody will say, oh, don't move to East Knoxville. That one frustrates me so much. What's wrong with East Knoxville? Most of it's just rural, it's farmland. You get more acreage there for the money, but there's nothing wrong with East Knoxville. Every town has parts of the community that have higher crime stats than anywhere else. But most of East Knoxville is super quiet farmland. So I always try to explain that to people, that just because you heard it on Facebook doesn't make it fact. And you got all these people saying, oh, don't move here. We're tired of all the California people. Don't listen to that. There's room for everybody. I don't believe in telling people that we don't have room for them or that they're not welcome here. I don't share that perspective. But I think you see stereotypes everywhere. So you also have the stereotype in Knoxville that all the West Knoxville people, especially Farragut, are rich. I probably shouldn't say this. I've got an extended family member that likes to say, oh, I wouldn't live in West Knoxville. You couldn't pay me to live down there with all those stuck-up people. I've lived in North Knoxville, way out, like in Gibbs. I've lived in West Knoxville. I don't see the difference, yes, there's a lot more things to do in West Knoxville. North Knoxville's a little bit quieter. It's not as busy, but both are great places to live. It just really matters what you want to have proximity to. If you want to be closer to shopping and dining, you probably want to live in West Knoxville. If you want a quieter lifestyle, North Knoxville would fit you perfectly. Sometimes you just have to get beyond those stereotypes that people put on places that may or may not be true. Not everybody wears cowboy boots and overalls. I came from overalls. That was a normal thing. My dad wore overalls every day farming. But now if he got ready to go out in town, he would change and put on some slacks and a shirt. But, overalls were perfect for the kind of stuff he was doing every day. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I went to a closing actually at Knoxville Title, and my client came in overalls, and I was so excited because it reminded me of my little daddy out on the farm. He was just happy as he could be when he retired, taking care of the farm, and I enjoy seeing that. Another great example, there was a family that my dad was friends with when I was growing up, and if you had seen where they lived, or just to see them in person in their overalls and not fancy clothes, you would have thought they were poor as church mice, when in reality, the guy was a millionaire 15 times over. He had more money than anybody else I knew, and a lot more money than still many people I know. But he just didn't live that way. That wasn't what he was interested in, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know you've heard that Knoxville is very affordable, and while That has been the case for several years. It has really started to trend as not affordable, and I hate to say that, but our pricing has really gone up since the pandemic in 2020. I get so many phone calls from people, and they'll tell me, in fact, I got one 2 days ago, and the couple is moving here from out of state, and they said they wanted an acre of land or more, 3 or 4 bedrooms, and at least 2 baths, and they wanted to spend $250 or less, and I had to tell them that's not realistic here anymore. It's not even realistic if you're an hour outside of Knoxville. Land is not super plentiful, but that's a stereotype that we've had for a while, that we're very affordable, and I wish it were still the case, but unfortunately it's just not as affordable as it used to be. We could definitely be worse. I don't think income has grown as home prices have grown like we need it to, and that's made it a little bit more difficult for people to really consider Knoxville as an affordable option. So here's the hard truth. Is Knoxville a rural farming community like it used to be? It's not, but there is still some of that here. You'll see it more in North and East Knoxville. There's definitely a place for everybody. It's not quite as affordable as it used to be, but it's still not over the top unaffordable. So depending on the lifestyle you're looking for, I really still think we have a place for everybody, and that's the hard truth. Don't forget to check us out every Wednesday when we drop a new podcast. You can always follow us on Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.